The darkness was all-consuming. It wrapped around her like a thick, suffocating blanket, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. The alien girl's eyes fluttered open, but all she saw was blackness. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy, as though it didn't belong to her. She winced and struggled, each movement sending sharp pains through her chest. "Where am I?" she thought, but her voice was gone. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. She could only feel the cold, damp ground beneath her and the tightness in her chest that made her feel as if something was wrong. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Maybe it was all a nightmare. But as her senses slowly returned, she realized something was terribly wrong. The last thing she remembered was the war, the fierce battle, the screams, the explosions, the fear that gripped her heart as her people tried everything they could to fight an enemy far stronger than them. She remembered the elders. They had forced her to do it. They had given her no choice. They told her that to win the war, she had to become something else, something ... monstrous. At first, she had resisted, but the weight of the war had crushed her spirit. They promised it would only be temporary, that once the war was won, she could go back to being who she was. But now, as she lay there in the dark, her body felt different, heavier, stronger. She tried to stand. But as she pushed herself up, the ground seemed to tremble beneath her. She gazed down at her hands, and what she saw made her breath catch. Her fingers were longer, more jagged, like claws. The skin that once had been smooth and pale was now dark and cracked. A strange glowing light flickered from her palms, a red, eerie glow that seemed to pulse with life. Her heart raced. She lifted her other hand to her face, feeling the contours of her features. Her face, once delicate and beautiful, now seemed ... monstrous. Her skin was stretched tight, and sharp angles made her look like a creature from a nightmare. But the glowing red eyes were the most terrifying part. They stared back at her in the reflection of a nearby pool of water, glowing with an unnatural, terrifying light. She could hardly recognize herself. "What have they done to me?" she whispered, but still no sound came out. She collapsed back down to the ground, trying to gather her thoughts. Her mind raced with memories of what had led to this moment. War had been devastating, and when her people began losing, the elders decided to take drastic measures. They had given her the power to fight back, to become something more. But at what cost? Was it worth it? The power coursed through her, filling her with a strange kind of energy, but also with a deep sense of emptiness. She had wanted to protect her people, to end the war. But now, she wasn't sure who she was anymore. She wasn't sure if she was even still alive. A noise echoed through the darkness, a faint rustling sound that made her freeze. She strained her ears, trying to listen, but the noise didn't come again. Was she alone? Suddenly the ground began to shake beneath her. Her body tensed, the alien instincts that now ran through her veins awakening in full force. She could feel the vibrations in her bones. Something was coming. Something big. She pushed herself to her feet, her body moving on its own as if it had a mind of its own. Her feet landed heavily on the ground, leaving deep prints in the dirt. The world around her was still dark, but she could feel something. Shifting in the air, she wasn't alone. She could feel it. The pressure of something or someone watching her. Her eyes darted around, but all she could see was the black void of the place. The light from her glowing skin was the only thing illuminating the space around her. Her heart pounded louder in her chest as her mind raced. What was going on? Where was she? And more importantly, what was she supposed to do now? She stepped forward, her new form feeling both strange and familiar, like she wasn't entirely in control of it. Every step felt heavy, as though her body didn't quite fit her mind. She tried to focus to calm herself, but the rush of power that surged through her veins only made her more uncertain. Then suddenly a voice broke the silence. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. It was a human voice. "You're awake," the voice said, its tone steady, but filled with curiosity. The alien girl froze. A human here? In this place? Her mind was a whirlwind of questions. How had the human found her? Why was she hearing a human voice in this dark, strange place? Her glowing red eyes searched the darkness, trying to find the source of the voice. But all she could see was the swirling shadows. Her heart skipped a beat. She was no longer alone. War had brought her to this point, and now the next chapter of her life would begin. The human's words echoed in her mind. "You're awake." But what did that mean for her? Could she still be the protector she once was? Or had she truly become the monster she feared? The story had just begun. The alien girl's mind swirled with confusion, and her heart raced. The human's voice echoed in the dark, but she couldn't move. Her new monstrous form, though powerful, felt foreign. It was as though it belonged to someone else. Someone. She didn't know. "You're awake." The words hung in the air, breaking the silence around her. The alien girl hesitated, her glowing red eyes scanning the blackness. She tried to focus, to make sense of the voice, but there was something unsettling about it. The human's presence was both a comfort and a threat. She had never known a human before. In her world, they were mere legends, stories passed down, from generation to generation, never believed to be real. But now, here one was, standing in front of her. Or perhaps more accurately, hiding somewhere in the shadows, watching her, waiting. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The alien girl could hear her own breathing, heavy and uneven, her chest rising and falling with every uncertain breath. She was so different now, and in that difference, she felt more isolated than ever before. She had been part of a great civilization, a civilization that was now on the brink of destruction. She had been a protector, a leader. But now, as she stood in this dark place, her transformation felt like a prison. She couldn't even recognize herself anymore. Her thoughts drifted to the moments before her transformation. The conversations with the elders, the decision to turn her into a weapon. They had told her it was the only way to win the war, that her people were losing, that time was running out. They had promised that once the war was over, she would be able to go back to who she was. But that was before she became this monster. The truth was, she wasn't sure anymore if she could ever return to her old self. The power surged through her, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. But with it came a deep emptiness, a hollow feeling that threatened to swallow her whole. The elders had told her that this was for the greater good. They had said that she would be the key to victory, that her new form was necessary for survival. But in the quiet of this dark place, surrounded by nothing but shadows, she questioned everything. Was this really the only way? Was she truly just a weapon meant to destroy and nothing more? The thought left her feeling sick. She had never asked for this. She had never wanted to be turned into a monster. She only wanted to protect her people, to find a way to stop the bloodshed. But now, she had become the very thing she had fought against, the creature she feared. Her hand clenched into a fist, her claws digging into her own palm. The pain felt real. Her body, once a symbol of peace, was now a machine of war. And yet, there was a part of her that still clung to the hope that she could change, that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to be something more than the monster she had become. The human's voice broke through her thoughts again, pulling her back to the present. "I know what you're thinking," the human said, his voice calm but filled with understanding. "You don't have to be what they made you. You're more than that." The alien girl's heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? Could she really be more than this twisted version of herself? Could she find a way to break free from the chains that held her? A mix of fear and hope bubbled within her. Fear, because the path ahead was uncertain, because she had no idea how to undo what had been done to her. But also hope that the human was right. Hope that there was still a chance for her to be more than just a weapon. She looked at the human for the first time, her red eyes narrowing in the dim light. His face was soft, kind, and unthreatening. His presence was gentle, but there was strength in it. He didn't see her as a monster. He didn't fear her. For the first time since her transformation, she felt something other than pain and confusion. "I can help you," the human continued, taking a step closer. "But only if you want it. You don't have to fight this war alone. You don't have to carry the burden of what they've done to you." The alien girl's mind was racing. She had been taught to never trust humans, to view them as enemies. But everything she had learned seemed irrelevant now. Her world had been shattered, and now, standing in front of her was someone who offered her something she had long lost: freedom. Freedom from her monstrous form. Freedom from the war. Freedom from the chains of destiny that had been imposed. On her, the thought was terrifying, yet exhilarating. If she accepted this offer, it meant stepping into the unknown. It meant breaking away from everything she had ever known. Her eyes, once filled with fear, began to soften as she considered the possibilities. Maybe this human wasn't just a stranger. Maybe he could show her a way out. For the first time since her transformation, the alien girl felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what she might become. She took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling in her chest. The choice was hers, and it was the hardest one she had ever faced. But it was also the most important. The alien girl's claws dug into the cold earth as she fought to steady her breathing. Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat a painful reminder of the monster she had become. The shadows around her seemed to stretch, pulling at the edges of her consciousness, making her feel even more lost. But the human's words rang in her mind, repeating over and over, "You don't have to be what they made you." The thought was like a distant beacon in the darkness, lighting the way out of the chaos she had become trapped in. But as the weight of her transformation settled deeper within her, she wondered if she could really escape it. Could she really leave behind the monster she had become and embrace something else? Suddenly, a rustling sound broke her from her thoughts. Her head whipped around, her red eyes glowing with an intensity that sent a ripple through the air. In the distance, she saw a figure moving toward her, cloaked in darkness. But there was no mistaking it. This was the human. She didn't know what to expect. She had heard stories about humans, stories that painted them as weak and fragile beings, easy to crush in the battle for survival. Yet there was something about this human that didn't match the tales. He wasn't running from her. He wasn't afraid. As he approached, she could see the way he moved, confidently, yet cautiously. It was clear that he wasn't just another survivor in this war-torn world. He was different. The calmness in his eyes, the way his presence seemed to fill the space between them, felt ... strange to her. She had never met anyone like him. The air between them crackled with an energy she couldn't place. She should have been angry, should have lashed out at him. But instead, she stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The human stopped a few feet away, not making any sudden movements. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, there was a silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. His gaze was steady, not filled with fear or judgment, but with something else. ... Curiosity. Understanding. "Why aren't you afraid?" she finally managed to ask, her voice low, rough from the strain of her transformation. The human took a slow step forward, his expression unreadable. He didn't answer right away, and the alien girl felt her pulse quicken, unsure of what to expect. "You are not what you think you are," the human said, his voice calm and steady. Breaking the silence, the words sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't what she expected. She had been trained to fight, to be strong, to be a weapon. And yet here was a human who spoke as if he saw her for something more. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Uncertainty creeping into her tone. Her red eyes never left his face, trying to read him, trying to understand if he was just another trick of the war. The human smiled softly, almost as if he understood her confusion. "You're more than just a monster," he said, his words cutting through the fear and doubt that clouded her mind. "You're not defined by what they've made you. There's still something inside of you that hasn't changed. Something they can't take away." The alien girl took a step back, her mind spinning. She wanted to believe him, but the pain of her transformation still gripped her. She felt as if her very essence had been ripped away, leaving only this twisted shell behind. How could he possibly see anything beyond that? The human extended his hand toward her slowly, as if waiting for permission. His gesture was gentle, unthreatening, but to the alien girl, it was more than just an offer of help. It was an invitation. It's an invitation to trust, to believe that there was still a path forward. For a long moment, the alien girl stood still, her body frozen in indecision. Her monstrous form felt like a prison, each movement a reminder of how far she had fallen. She wanted to push him away, to reject the kindness in his eyes. But there was a part of her hidden, deep within, that longed for a different path, a different future. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, the words raw with emotion she had never allowed herself to express before. Her gaze fell to the ground, as if ashamed to meet his eyes. The human didn't hesitate. "Because I believe you can be more than this," he replied simply. "You don't have to carry the weight of this war alone. You can choose a different way." His words were like a lifeline, and though part of her recoiled, another part of her unfamiliar part felt a flicker of something deeper. A longing to believe, to change. To escape the prison she had built for herself. For the first time, the alien girl realized that the true battle was not just against the enemies of her planet. It was against the war within herself, the conflict between what she had become and who she could still be. As the human lowered his hand, waiting for her to make a choice, the alien girl's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that accepting his offer would mean stepping away from everything she had known, would mean facing her deepest fears and doubts. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was the only way to find the person she once was, or maybe even someone better. She took a tentative step forward. The alien girl could feel the transformation deep within her bones, as though every inch of her body was at war with itself. She stood on the edge of the battlefield, looking out over the chaos. The war had raged for so long, and the bloodshed seemed endless. She had always been a warrior, but now her very identity felt fractured. She wasn't sure who she was anymore, or if the monster she had become could ever be undone. Her heart, however, was not yet hardened. As she looked out across the field, she saw the faces of her people, once proud, noble, and full of hope, now twisted by the very same transformation she had endured. Some had become nearly unrecognizable, driven by the power of their new forms. Others had lost themselves completely, consumed by the rage that came with their monstrous appearances. The very creatures she had been meant to protect had been turned into weapons, just like her. But what disturbed her most was that the enemy was no longer the force she had once feared. It wasn't just the invaders from the distant planet, anymore it was her own people too. They had become just as monstrous, driven by desperation and the need to win at any cost. She clenched her fists, claws scraping against the hardened earth. The power was there, coursing through her veins, ready to be unleashed. It was everything she had been taught to use in battle. But deep down, she knew it wasn't the answer. Violence wasn't the answer. The human's words echoed in her mind. "You don't have to be what they made you." For a brief moment, she allowed herself to close her eyes, trying to block out the noise of the war and the whispers of her monstrous form. She remembered the person she had been before, someone who had once dreamed of peace, who had wanted to protect her world without shedding blood. That person felt so far away now, but as the memories of her former self flickered, something within her stirred. There had to be another way. She couldn't go on living like this, a puppet to the war, a weapon without a soul. Her eyes snapped open just as a figure appeared before her, a familiar face from the battlefield. One of her own people, someone she had once trusted, now standing. In front of her, with glowing red eyes and a snarling expression, traitor. The figure's voice was grating, filled with hatred. "You dare question what we've become. You are one of us now. It's a monster, just like the rest of us. You cannot run from that." The alien girl's heart sank. She recognized the voice. It was Karen, once a fellow leader in her people's ranks. Karen had been her closest ally, someone she had once trusted with her life. But now, Karen's features were twisted, and the hatred in her eyes was all-consuming. "No," the alien girl replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "I may look like a monster, but I am not one. I will not fight like this." Karen took a step forward, her claws extended, ready for battle. "You are weak. You are the one who has betrayed us. You turned your back on everything we fought." The alien girl's fists tightened. The urge to fight, to use the power coursing through her, burned brightly within her. It would be so easy, just one strike, and Karen would be no more. But as her claws shimmered with deadly light, she could feel something deeper stirring within her. The choice was hers. Would she give in to the monster inside, or would she make a stand for something more? In that moment, the ground trembled beneath her, a reminder of the conflict tearing her world apart. The stakes were higher than ever. If she didn't stop this madness, she knew the war would continue until nothing was left. Her people, her planet, they would be lost forever. I will not fight you, Karen, the alien girl said, her voice a mixture of sadness and defiance. I refuse to be a part of this destruction. Karen's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. With fury? Then you are no better than the enemy. You'll be nothing but a victim, just like the rest of them. Before the alien girl could respond, Karen lunged at her with unnatural speed, claws slashing through the air. The alien girl barely had time to react, instinctively raising her arms in defense. The power within her surged, but she fought to control it. Pushing against the darkness that called out to her, Karen's claws scraped against her, and a sharp pain shot through her arm. But as she felt the familiar rush of rage begin to surface, she pushed it back, forcing herself to think clearly. No, she whispered to herself, as if trying to convince her own soul. I am not a monster. With a quick, fluid motion, she dodged Karen's next attack and stepped back, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Her claws retracted, the surge of violent energy fading. Karen stopped, eyes flickering between disbelief and fury. You are weak, she spat, turning away. This war is not for the weak. As Karen retreated, the alien girl stood there, chest heaving with exertion, struggling to hold on to her humanity. She had made her choice. She would not fight like this. She would not be a tool of war, but the battle within her was far from over. The conflict she faced was not just against the enemy, but against the monster she had become. Could she truly reclaim her soul, or was it already too late? The battlefield was silent now, save for the faint echo of footsteps as the alien girl walked away from the remnants of the war. Her heart pounded, not from fear or the thrill of battle, but from the weight of the choice she had just made. She had turned her back on the fight, on everything that had been drilled into her, everything she had been taught to value. She had chosen to leave the monster behind, but as she walked, each step felt heavier than the last. Could she really walk away from it all? Could she truly escape the war, her monstrous form, and the power that surged through her? The landscape around her seemed to mock her, desolate, scarred by conflict, as if the earth itself had been twisted into a version of the war she had just abandoned. The once beautiful terrain of her planet now lay in ruin, just like her spirit, just like her people. The transformation had taken its toll on everything, on all of them. Ahead, she could see the human, his silhouette against the setting sun. He was waiting, standing still, as if expecting her to arrive. His figure was calm, serene, in sharp contrast to the chaos that had consumed her world. But as she approached him, something inside her stirred again, a deep, gnawing doubt. Had she made the right choice? Could she truly live with herself after walking away from her people? After abandoning everything she had known? What if she was wrong? The question echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. The human had offered her a way out, a chance at redemption. But what if redemption wasn't possible? What if she could never shake the image of the monster she had become? Her claws tingled with an urge to lash out, to reclaim the strength and power that had once made her feel invincible. But now it felt hollow, a mere reflection of the destruction she had chosen to abandon. When she reached the human, she stopped, a few feet away, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. He didn't say anything immediately. He simply watched her, as if giving her the space to process everything that had happened, everything that was still unfolding. You're standing here, he said at last, his voice low but full of understanding. You've made your choice. This isn't the end, you know? It's only the beginning. The alien girl frowned, her glowing red eyes narrowing. How can you be so sure? What if I've made the wrong choice? What if I'm already too far gone? How can I go back to what I was when I don't even know who I am anymore? The human stepped closer, his expression calm, but his eyes never leaving hers. You're asking the wrong question, he said gently. The real question is not whether you've gone too far. It's whether you're willing to move forward, to change the path you're on. Her heart ached at his words. How could she move forward? What did that even look like? The past felt like a weight she could never shake off, and the future seemed like a fog she couldn't see through. The monster she had become was a part of her now. Could she really change? Could she really leave the destruction behind and be something else? You've already done something most can't, the human continued, his voice soft but filled with conviction. You've chosen to fight in a different way. To fight for who you truly are, not for what they turned you into. Words struck her deeply, as though they had pierced through the thick walls of doubt that had been suffocating her. She had fought for so long, for so many, but in the end, she'd only been fighting because that was what she had been told to do. The war had become her prison. But now, she had the chance to break free. I'm scared, she confessed, the words escaping before she could stop them. I don't know how to stop being what I've become. The human's face softened, and for the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, but as someone who understood. You don't need to stop being who you are. You need to choose what you want to become. The past doesn't define you not anymore. It's the choices you make now that will shape who you are. The alien girl stood there in silence, absorbing his words. The war had tried to break her, tried to turn her into something she wasn't. But the real battle wasn't against the enemy, was against the fear that had taken root inside her. The fear that she would always be a monster. Could she overcome it? Could she embrace the person she had once been? Or was she doomed to live in the shadow of her transformation forever? You've already made the hardest choice, the human added. You've chosen to fight for something more. Now, you just have to believe that it's possible. His words were a balm to her soul, soothing the raw edges of her doubt. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected: hope. Not just for her, but for the future. A future she could still shape despite everything that had happened. The alien girl took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside her. It wasn't instant. The fear didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled her. For the first time, she felt a sense of clarity. She didn't have to be the monster. She didn't have to be the weapon. She could be something more. The human smiled, as if sensing the change within her. Ready to begin again? The alien girl nodded slowly. She didn't have all the answers yet, and she wasn't sure where the path would lead. But one thing was certain: she had made the choice. The monster would not define her anymore, and in that moment, her war became a distant memory. The real fight was just beginning, and this time, she would fight for herself. The dawn was breaking, casting a pale, golden light over the ravaged landscape. The air was thick with the scent of burnt earth and the distant hum of the shattered remnants of war. It was silent now. The sounds of battle, the screams of the fallen, the clash of steel and claws, all of it had faded into the past. But the weight of what had happened still lingered. Heavy and oppressive, the alien girl stood at the edge of a broken cliff, looking out at the wasteland before her. Her monstrous form was no longer as terrifying to her. She had learned to accept it as a part of who she was. But beneath the hard, jagged surface of her shell, something fragile remained, the humanity she had fought to hold on to. The war had ended, yes, but the question that haunted her was, had she won? In the distance, she could see the remnants of her people, some broken and defeated. Others searching for purpose in a world that had been torn apart. She had walked away from the fight, turned her back on the destruction. But it didn't feel like victory, felt like an endless void. Her mind flickered back to the human. He had been her guide, her anchor in a world that had spun wildly out of control. He had given her hope when she had none left, had shown her that there was more to life than war, more to herself than just the monster that had been created to fight it. And yet, now, standing in the ruins of her planet, she wasn't sure what she had left. The war was over, but the scars it left in her, on her people, on everything she had ever known, would never fade. Is this what peace looks like? She whispered to herself, her voice lost in the wind. The human's words echoed in her mind once more. The real fight isn't over, it's the one within yourself. She had fought her transformation. She had rejected the path of destruction. But now, the true battle began against the fear of what she had become and the uncertainty of what the future held. It wasn't just about winning the war anymore. It was about rebuilding, finding a new purpose in a world that had lost its way. And more than that, it was about reclaiming her own soul. Her claws dug into the rocky ground, grounding her as she closed her eyes, remembering the pain of the transformation. The power that had once felt like salvation now felt like a curse. Her people were fractured. Some had embraced the monstrous forms, thriving in the destruction. Others, like her, had begun to see the futility of it all. The emptiness that followed victory, when the cost was too great, could she find a way to heal? Could she bring back the peace she once dreamed of? Or had the world already passed the point of no return? Suddenly, she felt a presence behind her, and a gentle hand rested on her shoulder. The human stood there, his expression calm, but filled with understanding. "You're not alone in this," he said quietly. The alien girl turned to face him, her red eyes searching his for some sign of reassurance. She had spent so long fighting for her people, for her survival, for the war, but now the real fight was one she had to face alone, healing from the destruction, from the fear, from the hatred that had consumed her people. "I don't know where to start," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The war is over, but I still feel like I'm fighting." The human smiled, his hand still resting on her shoulder. "It's not about starting over. It's about moving forward, together." For the first time in what felt like forever, the alien girl felt a flicker of something other than fear or regret, sense of purpose, a spark of hope. It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't an easy path, but it was a path one she could walk, one step at a time. The war might have ended, but the journey was far from over. She had no idea what the future held. But she knew one thing for certain. She would no longer fight alone. As the first light of day bathed the broken world in its soft glow, she took a deep breath, steadying herself. There would be challenges. Ahead, there would be struggles and setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, the alien girl felt ready to face them. Maybe peace didn't come all at once. Maybe it was something that had to be built, piece by piece, from the ruins of the past. But with the human beside her, she knew they could rebuild together, not just the planet, but herself. And that, perhaps, was the hardest and most important fight of all. The world before her was unrecognizable, both foreign and familiar all at once. The battlefield that had once defined her existence was now an open expanse of possibility. Though it was still scarred by the remnants of war, the skies above, once filled with the smoke of destruction, were now clear, their pale blue stretching endlessly into the horizon. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something new to emerge from the ashes. The alien girl stood at the center of this new beginning. Her claws still present, still jagged, but her stance had shifted. She was no longer the creature who had been created for war. She was something more now, something undefined. Her monstrous form was no longer a prison, but a symbol of strength that had been tempered with choice. With change, behind her the human stood, quietly, his presence grounding her in this moment of transition. Together, they had witnessed the fall of an old world. So now together, they would begin to build a new one. "What do we do now?" the alien girl asked softly, her voice filled with both uncertainty and hope. The question had been hanging in her mind for days, weeks, maybe longer. There had been so much destruction, so much chaos. But now that the war was over, now that she had chosen a different path, what came next? The human looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Now we rebuild, not just the land, but everything that was broken." It's about healing not just the world around us, but within us as well. The alien girl nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words settle within her. Rebuilding was not a simple task. It wasn't about fixing what had been broken, it was about creating something new, something better, out of everything that had been lost. The scars of the past would remain. Yes, but they didn't have to define them. The true challenge wasn't in erasing the past, it was in finding a way to move forward. Together, she glanced around at the faces of her people, who had begun to gather in the distance. Some of them were still uncertain, still haunted by the war and the monsters they had become. Others were beginning to emerge from the shadows of fear, seeing the possibility of a life beyond destruction. It would take time. Healing would take time, but for the first time, the alien girl felt a spark of optimism. It wasn't a grand, world-changing revolution, but a quiet, steady shift that began with the willingness to see beyond the destruction, beyond the fear. "Do you think they will follow?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. The human gave a small smile, as if he had already known her unspoken fears. "It won't be easy. Some may not believe it's possible. But there will always be those who will follow the light, who will believe in something better. And as long as there are people like you, like us, there's always hope." The alien girl's heart swelled with the weight of those words. For so long, she had been trapped by the expectations of her people, by the war, by the monster inside her. But now, for the first time, she felt the freedom to choose her own path, to decide what kind of leader, what kind of person she would be. She turned toward the horizon, her gaze fixed on the future. There were no more battles to fight, no more enemies to face, not in the way she had known. Now, the war was against the scars of the past, against the fear of the unknown, against the temptation to fall back into the old ways of destruction. But this time, she was different. This time, she had something that no war could take away, her choice. The alien girl raised her head, taking in a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. The world had changed, and so had she. "We can make this world a place where peace doesn't come from the absence of conflict," she said, her voice firm, "but from the courage to choose a different path every single day." The human nodded in silent agreement, his eyes filled with admiration, and together they took their first step into the unknown. Not as monsters, not as weapons, but as two souls united by hope. Ready to rebuild a world that had almost been lost. The journey would be long, and the road would be hard. But for the first time in her life, the alien girl felt certain of one thing. She was no longer fighting for survival. She was fighting for a future. A future that was hers to shape, hers to build. And with that, the new world began.